Right at this moment, you might be looking at areas of your life where things feel broken. Maybe it's a relationship that fell apart, a dream that didn't work out, or opportunities you feel you've missed forever. And there's this quiet voice in your head whispering, "It's too late. This can't be fixed." But what if I told you that God specializes in restoration? What if the very thing you thought was gone forever is exactly what He's preparing to give back to you better than before? Here's what happens to so many of us. We experience loss and we accept it as final. We look at the closed door and think, well, that chapter is over. We settle into a new normal that feels less than what God originally intended. And the enemy loves this because when you believe restoration is impossible, you stop hoping. You stop praying with expectation. You start living in survival mode instead of the abundant life Jesus promised you. But listen to what God says in Joel 2:25. "I will restore to you the years that the locusts have eaten." Now, this is powerful because God isn't just saying, "I'll give you something new to replace what you lost." He's saying, "I will restore the actual time, the actual things that were taken from you." When God spoke this to the Israelites, they had just gone through devastating loss. Locusts had destroyed their crops, their livelihood, everything. It looked hopeless. But God didn't just promise them a fresh start. He promised restoration of what the locusts devoured. That's the heart of your Father. He doesn't just move you past your pain, He redeems it. And here's where it gets even better. In Job 42:20, we see something incredible. The Lord restored the fortunes of Job when he prayed for his friends, and the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Twice as much. Job lost everything: his children, his health, his wealth, his reputation. Everyone told him to give up. But God didn't just bring him back to where he was. God doubled it. This tells us something crucial about God's character. His restoration isn't about returning you to baseline. It's about abundance. When God restores, He restores with overflow. Which of these promises speaks to your heart right now? Restoration of time or restoration with increase? Let me know in the comments below. So why does God do this? Because He's not just fixing what's broken. He's demonstrating that nothing is wasted in His hands. Your pain has a purpose. Your loss has meaning. And when He restores you, it becomes a testimony that points others to His faithfulness. How does this restoration happen? Not by you striving or manipulating circumstances. Look at both Joel and Job. Restoration came when they turned their hearts back to God. For Job, it happened when he prayed for his friends, when he moved from self-focus to blessing others even in his pain. Here's what this looks like practically for you today. First, bring your loss before God honestly. Don't spiritualize it or pretend it doesn't hurt. Tell Him, "This area feels dead. I need your restoration." Second, start praying expectantly. Not just God, if it's your will, but God, you are a restorer, and I'm believing you for restoration in this specific area. Third, and this is crucial, stay in community and keep serving others even while you're waiting. Job's breakthrough came when he prayed for his friends. Sometimes your miracle is connected to you being a blessing to someone else. And if you're thinking, that's Old Testament, does this still apply to me? Look at what Jesus says in John 10:10. "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." Jesus directly contrasts the enemy's agenda with His own. The enemy steals. Jesus restores and gives abundance. So today, I want you to identify one area where you've accepted loss as final. Maybe it's hope for a healed marriage. Maybe it's a dream you buried. Maybe it's joy you haven't felt in years. And I want you to do something radical. Ask God specifically to restore it. Not because you're entitled to it, but because that's who He is. He's the God of restoration. He's the God who makes all things new, and He's not done writing your story. If you're believing God for restoration in any area of your life, drop an amen in the comments. Let's stand in faith together. Your best days aren't behind you. God is about to restore what was taken, and He's going to do it in a way that leaves no doubt it was Him.